Recovery Elevator episode 575.
It's hard. It sucks in a lot of ways, but once you do it, you can just like breathe out and it's like, oh my gosh, I feel so free now.
Welcome to the Recovery Elevator podcast. My name is Paul Churchill, and this is How We Quit. On today's episode, we have Greg. He's 57 years old, from Midlothian, Virginia, and he took his last drink of alcohol on December 8th, 2025. Incredible work, Greg. I want to say, what's up, Spindrift Tall Boys? I was at a gas station the other day, and I was like, did I just see Spindrift in the tall 16-ounce format? Yes, I did. So of course I picked some up, and so cool to see the AF movement continuing to roll. Recovery Elevator is compiling a list of recovery stories, and we're going to put them in a book called This Is How We Quit. And hopefully this book comes out midsummer sometime. So if you want to be part of this book and submit your story, we'd love to have you. And there is no sobriety requirement. So if you're saying, well, I've only been sober 30 days, I can't submit my story, then that's nonsense. So send an email to info@recoveryelevator.com and we'll respond with a Google form so you can fill it out and submit your story. And side note, the word only is one of our big pet peeves here at Recovery Elevator. I often hear people say, I've only got 3 days. I've only got a week. Every day away from alcohol is a milestone, a miracle, and something to celebrate. Hey, I want to mention the monthly membership fee for Cafe RE will increase from $24 a month to $29 per month this Sunday on March 1st. But hang on, stick with me for a sec. If you're already a member, your price will not go up. You're grandfathered in. So if you want to get into Cafe RE before the price goes up, join before this Sunday. And hey, I wish we didn't have to raise our prices, but our app is $20,000 per year. And let's get real for a second. $29 a month is most likely a fraction on what you spent on alcohol per month. And $29 per month versus the cost of a DUI, you get what I'm saying. Before we get any further, this is an ad from BetterHelp. It feels like February is all about flowers, candy, stuffed animals, and of course, lots of talk about relationships and dating. And sometimes it feels like everyone else has it all together regarding their love lives. But the truth is, most of us, everybody, we're still figuring it out and finding our way. And no matter where you are in your romantic journey or just with your connections with other human beings in general, therapy can help you find your way, help you determine what you want, what feels heavy, and how you can take some pressure off yourself. Sometimes, well, all the time, I have blind spots in my own relationships, and therapy is a great way to illuminate what I need to work on. I don't have relationships figured out or this whole connection thing, which is so important to recovery, which is why I meet regularly with a therapist. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 6 million people globally. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/elevator. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/elevator. Okay, let's get started. Somebody sent this piece to me several months ago, and I wish I could give credit to where credit is due. But it's a beautiful written piece about what finally made somebody quit drinking. So I'm just going to read it and say thank you to the person who wrote this so we can share it with the world. What finally made me quit drinking? People keep asking what the thing was that finally made me quit drinking. They want a single dramatic moment that they can point to. One clean event that explains everything and lets them believe change only happens after disaster. I wish there were a neat answer, but there isn't. No crash, no rock bottom, no ambulance, no ultimatum, no intervention, no moment where the room went quiet and I suddenly saw the light. That version is tidy, but life rarely is. The truth is far more boring and far more uncomfortable, which is probably why it doesn't get shared as much. I just got tired. Not tired as in exhausted or burned out. Tired of bullshitting myself. I wasn't waking up every day thinking I'm an alcoholic. I wasn't standing in front of mirrors making declarations or promises. I was waking up thinking, I'll sort this out soon. Soon is a very useful word. It gives you cover. It lets you keep going without having to do anything differently. I used it all the time. After this busy spell, after the weekend, after the next work push, after things calm down, always after, but never now. Soon turns into months, months turn into years, years into decades. I drank because it was automatic. End of the day, end of the week, end of stress, end of boredom, end of any emotion that needed switching off. Nothing dramatic, nothing extreme. Just habit layered on habit over decades until it stopped feeling like a choice at all. At some point, quietly and without ceremony, it dawned on me that alcohol wasn't the problem I was trying to solve. It was the thing I reached for when I didn't want to feel, think, reflect, or sit with myself in any real way. It filled the gaps. It softened the edges. It blurred the questions I didn't want to answer. And the more honest I got, the harder it became to ignore what it was actually doing. Not in a catastrophic way. In a slow, grinding, background erosion kind of way. My sleep was wrecked, even when I thought I was sleeping fine. My mood was flat. Not miserable, just dulled. Anxiety was humming quietly in the background all the time. Like low-level static I learned to live with. My body felt inflamed, heavy, older than it should have felt. But I kept telling myself the same stories. I'm fine. I'm functioning. I'm not like those people. It's not that bad. Here's the thing. Functioning isn't the same as living. It's just surviving comfortably enough to avoid changing anything. The shift didn't come from willpower. I've got plenty of that, and it never stopped me from drinking before. Willpower is useful for white-knuckling. It's useless against something you're still lying to yourself about. The shift came when I stopped romanticizing alcohol and started paying attention to the bill it was quietly handing me every day. Not someday, not in the future, but daily. The cost wasn't just physical. It was mental, emotional, and internal. It was energy, clarity, self-respect, and presence. Once I really saw that, drinking stopped feeling like a treat or a reward. It stopped feeling rebellious or deserved. It just felt pointless. I didn't quit in a blaze of glory. I didn't announce it to the world. I didn't replace it with another crutch or badge of identity. I didn't join anything or take on a label. I just stopped lying. I stopped pretending alcohol was giving me something it clearly wasn't. I stopped defending it, stopped justifying it, stopped bargaining with it. When that lie fell apart, the habit went with it. Not overnight, not effortlessly, but cleanly. If you're looking for the moment, you might be missing it. It may already be there, quietly waiting for you to stop looking past it. Sometimes it isn't loud. Sometimes it doesn't come with consequences that force your hand. Sometimes it's just a quiet realization you can't unsee. And once you see it clearly, carrying on starts to feel harder than stopping. Not because stopping is easy, but because pretending gets exhausting. That's all it was for me. Not heroic, not dramatic, not inspirational in the way stories usually are, just honest. And before we hear from Greg, let's hear from my favorite resource, Cafe RE. Have you tried to quit drinking and it didn't go as planned? Maybe you made it 3 days and then completely forgot how alcohol was ruining your life. But deep down you know it was. So here's the key. You're not supposed to do this alone. At Cafe RE, we embrace all pathways into recovery as long as it's not a solo mission. For only a fraction of what you paid on alcohol per month, you get access to over 25 chats and meetings per week. We've got in-house AA meetings, recovery dharma, open mic, book club, and more. Plus, you can be paired with an accountability partner as many times as you'd like. Cafe RE has been in operation for over 10 years, so we know a thing or two about which ice cream flavors are the best. What's up, salted caramel? In Cafe RE, we're not dwelling on the void left by alcohol. We're moving forward in life and having fun. Go to cafe-re.org and then enter the promo code CONNECT for your first month free. Again, that's cafe-re.org and use the code CONNECT for your first month free. Greg, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Paul. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking, Greg. I'm excited to be here with you. Let's get right into this. When was your
You
last
bet.
drink?
It was on December 8th, 2025.
Right on. And before we hit record, you said today is day 45. Yeah,
Yes,
that's
it
what's
is.
up, my man. Great job. How do you feel?
I feel fantastic, Paul. Better than I have in a long time.
Heck yeah. A quick question before we get into some background information about yourself and your story. 45 days ago, was that your first attempt at quitting drinking?
No, it was not. I had taken a couple other shots at it before. The difference this time, recovery is part of the equation, a serious part of the equation. And I just did not give enough credence to my recovery attempts. When I tried previously, there was a lot of white knuckling, maybe some paying lip service to recovery, if you will. But this time I'm taking it real seriously. I'm investing in myself, and it's making all the difference in the world.
Yeah, recovery this time is part of the equation. I'm really curious to hear what that means for you and to learn how you did it. But before we get into your story, Greg, let's learn a little bit more about you. Where are you calling in from? What's your age? What does your professional and family life look like? And what do you like to do for fun, Greg?
Yeah, sure thing. So my name is Greg. I am 57 years old. I am calling you from Midlothian, Virginia, which is just a little bit south of Richmond, Virginia, the capital of our state. Professionally, I'm independently employed. I do a lot of lawn and landscape type of work, and also a lot of other kind of just odd jobs for anybody in our community here who might need my services. As far as my family, I have a wife. I've been married for 24 years. We are currently separated, but working on reconciliation at the moment. I have four adult age children ranging in ages from 20 to 33. I have a 3.5-year-old granddaughter, two dogs and a cat. And as far as what I like to do for fun, my favorite thing in the world to do, Paul, is to go to garage sales and yard sales. It's like my weekend adventure with my wife and I. We usually go out together and do that. Huge sports fan. I do fantasy football in the fall. I've got 3 teams currently in fantasy football. And although I can't play an instrument or sing worth a lick, I do love music, love listening to music, love going to concerts of all different kinds. And really, in my sobriety, I'm just looking for some new ways to enjoy myself, new ways to just have fun and take in all that life has.
Yeah, garage sales in America is like this hidden cultural gem of what we do here, and other countries don't have garage sales like we do. I took my wife to a couple of them, and she's not from the USA, and she's like, whoa, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, they're basically giving this stuff away, and if you don't like the price, you walk up and just say, nope, I'm paying this. Do your two dogs and cats get along? Is that a harmonious relationship inside your house?
The cat really keeps to herself up in the closet of my son's room for the most part. I mean, the dogs are fine with her, but she just doesn't care for them too much. The two dogs get along great. They're best buddies. So there's harmony, but there's some isolation on the cat's part.
Gotcha. Well, Greg, I'm excited to hear your story with alcohol. Let's do it. I'm going to turn it over to you. You can take it from wherever you want to start. I'll jump in with questions as I see fit.
So I'm not going to dwell too much on like the very early stages of things, but like a lot of people, my first sip of beer was when my dad was out working in the yard when I was a kid. He drank Stroh's beer, which it's amazing that I ever got hooked on beer when my first taste was Stroh's because that stuff was just absolute swill, but I did. The first time I really drank seriously was my graduation night from high school. I didn't really drink through high school or anything like that. But from that point on, I pretty much hit the ground running and, went to college, drank my way through my first 2 years, came out with a GPA under 2.0 at a branch campus of a state university up in Pennsylvania, where I'm originally from. At that point, my father decided that if he was going to continue paying for my education, I was going to go to a Christian university that he wanted me to attend, that at the time I didn't want to go to. So I moved out of the house, moved into an apartment with a couple of guys, continued partying all through that time. But I was working in retail, making minimum wage, and decided I needed to go back to school. So I took my dad up on his offer and went to the university that he wanted me to go to. Again, it was a Christian university, so there was a lot of pretty hardcore core rules against drinking. but I found my way around those rules and just continued my kind of party lifestyle right up until I finished school there in 1992. When I was coming out of school, my first child was on the way. So I had to get myself a job. Took a job in retail management in a kind of a training program that they had, and did that for a while, drinking all the time throughout that. Eventually got tired of that, got out of that, went into the restaurant business in the early 90s. And as you know, that is a super hardcore drinking environment for the most part. So I was drinking every night after work, staying at the bar through all hours. And at this point, my son had already been born. That didn't stop me, didn't make a difference in my drinking. The reason I go into this is that while I was working at the restaurant I was working at, my sister passed away. She
Mm.
was 29 years old. It was very unexpected, accidental drowning. And so that obviously added to some trauma experience in my life and definitely helped to accelerate the drinking as I tried to kill the pain from that experience rather than just to deal with it in a healthy way.
Well, first off, I'm sorry for your loss. That's intense. And looking back, you could see that really strong life experience, your drinking ramped up after that.
Yes, absolutely. It kind of went to a point, Paul, where when I was in high school, that very end of high school and the summer after, and then through college, I was really drinking to have fun, to fit in, to be cool. But after my son was born, my first child, a lot of the social aspect of drinking and the partying aspect and stuff kind of went away, and I became a very solitary drinker. And I went from doing it for the sake of having fun and fitting in and being cool. It basically became a survival tool for me, Paul, and was that way for decades.
Did you realize this? Did you have a conversation with yourself?
At that time, though, I was young and stupid and very immature. And it was just what I did, Paul. I mean, I didn't consider myself an alcoholic. I didn't think I had a drinking problem. I just called myself a boozer. I mean, I was just a boozer. I like to drink beer. That was me. So fast forward a little bit, moved back home to where I was originally from in Pennsylvania. I had been in a different part of the state when my sister passed to be closer to family. And at that time, my first daughter was born. It was about 13 months after my son was born. And again, no change. It was every day. It was heavy.
What
It
does
was just,
heavy look like? Was it beer?
it was primarily beer. Yeah, I drank a lot of liquor in college, but I switched to mainly beer after college and pretty much through the rest of my drinking days. At that point, Paul, I would say it was maybe 8 to 10 a night. I would mostly just drink after work and just kind of put myself to bed that way.
And you've got two young children in the house.
At that point, yeah.
Yeah.
And I've heard you ask the question about trying to parent while you're heavily involved with alcohol. And I thought about that, and it was just the only way I knew, Paul, because I had done it since before any of my children were born. And again, with my youngest now being 20, I did it throughout their entire lives. It was just a part of me throughout all of that. So I didn't really know any other way. And I was and still am, a very involved dad, coached Little League, coached soccer, went to all their events, played with them till, the cows came home, like all those kind of things. But obviously, that presence was never 100% there. Like I could have fun with them and, like I said, coach their teams and do different things like that. But I was never 100% present while I was doing that. And unfortunately, looking back, I regret that. Can't do anything about it now. But, I love all four of my children. They all love me, and we still all have great relationships. And thank God alcohol didn't take that away from me.
Greg, you've got young children in your house. You're drinking 8 to 10 beers a day. This is 20 years ago. And I've yet to hear a story of a progression going the other way, of things just like phasing out with alcohol, right? So I'm guessing that 8 to 10 beers, did it go to 10 to 12, 14 to 16? Did the time you drank from after work go to 5 o'clock to 4 o'clock to 3 o'clock?
There was definitely a progression, and I never took a break, Paul. It was every day. It was heavy every day. I'm one of those people that just, there's no off switch. There never has been. Couldn't just kick back with a beer or two and enjoy that and call it a day. So yeah, it progressed. The one thing I never did was drink while I was working. So I kind of had that saving grace in that I wasn't day drinking at that point, maybe some on the weekends, but definitely not during the week or whenever I was working. But it got pretty heavy and it just, it never let up. There was never any attempts really at any kind of moderation at that point. There was no thoughts of quitting. There was no really even influences in my life that were telling me, hey, you got to do something about this, dude.
So no thoughts of moderation, but were there thoughts of, I'm drinking every single night, 365 days in a row. We might want to do something about this? Or
Yeah, no, it was unchecked at that point, Paul. Later, as I get through my story, there is some of that, but at that point, there was none of that. It was just what I did, and it was just how I was, and I foolishly accepted that as, hey, this is just how I live my life, and this is just kind of how it goes. So just kind of progressing a little bit, the mother of my two children and I, we called an end to our relationship when they were both fairly young. And my son, at least, was old enough to understand what was going on. And so when we had to sit the kids down on the couch and tell them that daddy wasn't going to live with them anymore, that was a hardcore, painful moment, Paul, for me, because I love those two. Would have given anything for them. At least I thought I would have, but I didn't give enough, obviously. But that just added. That just added to my need to further work at numbing, burying, medicating, whatever you want to call it, with the use of alcohol. So I stayed very active in both of their lives, very involved. In fact, at one point in Western Pennsylvania, we have these crazy things called duplexes where there's two houses in one, and they lived on one side and I lived on the other for quite some time. So I was actually physically very close to them and very involved in their lives. But within a few years of the time that I'm referring to now, I met my wife and we got married in 2001. Still drinking, but we, within a couple of years, had two children of our own together. They are now 21 and 20, or 20, I'm sorry, 22 and 20. But again, Paul, I just kept drinking away. And same kind of pattern where didn't really drink it while I was working at all. My evenings were my drinking time.
Greg, what were your mornings like? Were there hangovers? Probably not. You're probably used to the alcohol, but was it just like a fog? And was there a mental idea, just power through? 5 o'clock is right around the corner.
The hangovers, after years of doing this, they kind of either they weren't a thing or I was so accustomed to them that I didn't even realize what was going on. But definitely the fog was an issue. Wake up in the morning, just certainly not clear headed in any way. But I just powered through my days. I was still pretty young, pretty healthy, pretty active. So I had good enough levels of energy that I really could. I could just power through my day. And like you said, just wait for 5 o'clock or whatever time it was that I got home from work and could crack that first beer.
Greg, so we have time for the 45 days without alcohol.
Sure.
Let's get to the point where it progressed, where the pain showed up of like, wait a second, this really sucks. This hurts. Because after doing this for a while, most people only make change with alcohol when the pain lever gets pressed down hard enough.
So my wife's tolerance for my drinking became less and less as time went on. She did everything she could think of to try to get me to stop, to try to help me. And I did not respond to any of it, Paul. I was stubborn. The world revolved around me. This was something I needed. This is something I'm going to do. Damn the consequence. And it got to a point over the past few years where she actually started using words like divorce and separation.
This is recently, like the last couple of years?
Yeah, she put up with me and my drinking for a long time before those kind of words started coming out. And Paul, like it was like I was just playing kind of some sick game of chicken with her. I really didn't think she'd do it. And so I just kept doing what I was doing. And I kept thinking, no, she's not going to leave. She's not going to leave. I was cocky about it. But in March of 2025, she packed her things and she went to live with a friend.
Was there a moment that happened or just a culmination of all the drinking over the years?
It was kind of both. There was obviously the culmination of everything I had put her through for almost 24 years at that point. But she revealed to me later that The kind of tipping point, the straw that broke the camel's back for her was when I came to her and said, and I was drunk when I said it, that I'm done trying to quit. This is who I am. This is the way I was made to be. I'm done. I'm not going to try to quit again. I'm not going to try to get sober. This is just what I am. This is my lot in life. And so I quit on I quit on her. I quit on myself. And that was the point when she decided that she had to break away physically from me and just get away from the mess that I was and the addiction that I was in.
Listeners, I want to highlight something that Greg mentioned. He said, look, this is just who I am. This is how it's going to go. This is my lot in life, not quitting drinking. I'm quitting. This is fairly common. I hear this all the time on this podcast. And listeners, I'm telling you this right now, because if you're at a moment being like, you know what, like I've gave it a couple goes, it's not happening, I'm just going to ride this thing to the end. You may feel that way today, but Greg is sitting here with 45 days alcohol free. And I've heard this so many times on this podcast where people are just like, this is just who I am. And then they later show up on a recovery podcast with 1, 2, 3 years away from alcohol. So Greg, you obviously did not accept that fate for yourself.
So again, she moved out in March of 2023, and you'd think that'd be enough, but it wasn't. I kept my heels dug in. I didn't budge. I just kept right on drinking away. And so she and I stayed in touch, stayed as close probably as two separated people maybe can be. And then fast forward to August of 2025, the very early part of August, I heard a voice, and I believe it was God telling me that I needed to get my butt back in church. I'd grown up in the church. My wife and I had gone to church together the entire time we were married. But one thing I had never done in my life, Paul, was go to church by myself. And if I was going to get my butt back in church, that was the only way I could go, was by myself.
What were you doing when you heard that voice?
I was just hanging out in my kitchen. It came out of left field, Paul. Like, I was not having designs of going back to church anywhere else in my mind. It just was like, Greg, you got to go back to church. And my kind of MO prior to this was when those voices came, I would just drink them away. But for some reason, I chose to listen to this voice, and I went back to church. And without getting too far into the faith aspect of this, 3 weeks later, I gave my life to Jesus Christ. And I surrendered every part of my life except alcohol at that point. Except alcohol, Paul.
Okay, you still had your idol.
I did. I had my idol, my God,
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it. I was not ready to let that go.
What did it look like when you surrendered your life to Jesus Christ? I know there are some listeners wondering.
It was just a matter of getting on my knees and praying and just asking him to be the Lord of my life and to take control. And like I said, with the exception of alcohol, I just had decided that I wanted to surrender control of my life to him and just let him be in charge. I know there's that kind of Jesus take the wheel thing that people kind of jokingly say, but that's literally kind of what it was.
Did you feel different immediately after?
100%.
Oh.
100%. I actually, as I've mentioned, I didn't quit drinking until December. So there was a few months in between that time and when I started getting sober. But I actually started doing some recovery work after that, while I was still drinking, which is kind of, I know that's a little problematic in some ways, but I went on like this apology tour to people that I needed to kind of make amends with and people that I had wronged. I had a huge, long conversation with my wife where I had to confess things to her. I had to acknowledge a bunch of things to her. I started trying to find community for myself, which I had always been a very isolated person, drank by myself, didn't hang around people. So my thinking definitely changed, and my heart changed, Paul. My heart was completely transformed. I started looking at people different. I started thinking about people different. I started looking at myself different, thinking about myself different. My priorities changed. The things I did and didn't do changed. It was a real, genuine transformation. It's really to the point now, especially with 45 days of sobriety, Paul, I look in the mirror and I'm like, who is this? Who are you? I am a completely different person than I was 6 months ago.
I like how you said an apology tour. This is step 8 if you're in the rooms of the 12 steps.
Yeah.
And there's an early 20th century philosopher, a woman named Hannah Arendt, and she made the case that Jesus Christ gave humanity, our human species, the concept of forgiveness. Apparently, in churches pre Jesus Christ, there are things written on walls. This is like places of worship, like, please strike down my neighbor. He is stealing my crop. Like really horrible things that people are praying for. And then Jesus rolls around, and the night before his crucifixion, he tells his disciples one more thing. He says, love thy neighbor, right? And you can't go on a tour of apologies unless you forgive yourself before. And I'm guessing something happened at the biological, physiological, metaphysical level, the spiritual level, when you accepted Jesus Christ. Something shifted inside of you and said, I'm enough, I'm worthy. A love entered you from spirit, from connection, from the universe, from God, from Jesus. And then you had these really neat conversations with other people. I know religion can divide a room, and I know a lot of people, the higher power things, like, but hey, Greg, this is your story, man, and it helped and it worked. Carl Jung was a huge proponent that a power outside of ourselves was required, vital, necessary for us to make a change like this. Okay, we're not quite to your sobriety date yet, but let's get there, Greg.
The one thing that I found made a difference this time around, in addition to working my recovery, is that I had a foundation, and that was my faith. I didn't have it before when I tried to get sober. So, rolling to my start of sobriety, I made a decision that I was going to go to a Celebrate Recovery meeting on December 9th. And so, out of respect for the meeting, I decided I was going to stay sober until it was time to go to the meeting. I had been to AA before, and the very first AA meeting I went, I don't know how many beers I had in me, but I was definitely not sober. I thought, this time I'm going to try Celebrate Recovery, and I'm going to go and I'm going to stay sober. So got myself all psyched up that day, not a thing that I was like super comfortable doing. And I drove out to the church where the meeting was supposed to be, and there was nobody there. Like nobody there, no lights on, no cars in the parking lot, just nobody there. So I was discouraged because I had myself all fired up to do this, but I had to just basically turn around and drive home, right? My normal thing, Paul, would have been to drive home and just start drinking again. And I had beer in my fridge. I had plenty of beer in my fridge, always did. But I made a conscientious decision on the way home from that meeting that didn't happen that it was going to be day one, that I only had to go a couple hours more before I could go to bed sober. And day one's scared the heck out of me, Paul. I mean, I don't know how many mornings, you know this, you wake up so many mornings and today's going to be day one. I'm going to, and then by 10 o'clock at that point, I was like, nah, shut that voice up. I don't want to hear it.
10 a.m., right?
Heck yeah. I'm independently employed now, which is a good thing, but it was a bad thing for my drinking because I was never more than 5 minutes away from home. And if I wanted to have beer at 10 o'clock in the morning, I'd have beer at 10 o'clock in the morning. You better believe that I did. But yeah, so I made that day one, and I just started really working it from there. I turned up the intensity on listening to your podcast, which thank you so much, because they've been a huge help in my sobriety and recovery. The church piece, the community piece with some groups in my church that I became a part of. I have a kind of spiritual mentor who is also my accountability partner and works with me on my sobriety and recovery. And I just kind of kicked some things into the really high gear. Like I said, I had been kind of working on recovery a little bit for the months between August and December. But once I got that day one in, Paul, I was like, okay, let's just go ahead and do this.
Did you get any sleep that night? So decades of drinking, and you stopped drinking, and hey, I'm just gonna go to bed right now.
So the first night wasn't awful. The second night was terrible. But Paul, I mean, and this is just a grace of God thing, I consider myself so very fortunate. I've had almost no physical withdrawal symptoms, some headaches here and there. Really only one night that I had a really rough time sleeping. No shakes, no auditory hallucinate, like all those things. And Paul, like by the end, like I was 20 16-ounce beers a day, every day, like every day. There was no break. There was no,
Wait, 20 16-ounce beers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of alcohol. And so I'm just so thankful that I did not have to endure some of the withdrawal symptoms that other people do. I don't know why. I don't know why I was fortunate enough to not have those after a 40-year drinking career, but thank God that I was, because I hear what some of these other people go through. I hear it on your podcast. I've heard it in the AA meetings. I've heard it, from other people. And it's just like, man, that's just brutal. I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine.
I'm surprised as well. Maybe Jesus was with you.
I believe he was. And I sometimes can't believe I'm not dead. I'm sometimes can't believe that I don't weigh like 300 pounds for all the calories I put in my body. And I certainly can't believe that I did not go through a brutal time of withdrawal, but I'm sure thankful for it. Now, there's been a lot of, the mental stuff that you have to deal with when you get sober, and repressed memories, and, just dealing with things you never dealt with before, all the things you used to numb away and medicate away. There's been a lot of that. But from a physical standpoint, I've been very fortunate.
Yeah, let's talk about the mental stuff that shows up. I heard a line one time that says, you want to find out why you drink? Well, quit drinking, and you're going to find out pretty quick.
Yeah.
Right. So how did you deal with the mental chatter?
A lot of prayer. Like I said, kind of going on that apology tour and the acknowledgement tour with my wife, and confessing some things that I had to confess to her, and just burning some ships, as you like to say on your show. It's so mentally freeing. It's just like all this crap that was just stuck in my brain for so long that I just pushed down and pushed down and pushed down and pushed down with alcohol. I just started letting it come out, and it's still coming out. I experienced that in AA meetings, when I went to AA meetings. Just the ability to share with that room of drunks, if you will, and be able to tell them, hey, look, this is how screwed up I am. This is how I've messed up my life. There's a definite aspect of freedom in that. And so it's hard. It sucks in a lot of ways. But once you do it, you can just like breathe out. And it's like, oh my gosh, I feel so free now. And, I've got a long way to go with that. I have a lot of stuff that I'm still trying to work through. I still have repressed memories that come back to the surface, but there's definitely something to be said for just doing that work and working through it and allowing yourself to deal with those things. And it's okay to do it. As painful as it is, as awkward as it might be, whatever, it's okay to do it. It's good for you, darn it. It's healthy.
Greg, so earlier in the interview, you said, this time around, I'm doing recovery. What does that look like for you?
I've established a very consistent, like everyday morning routine. I wake up, I have a devotional book I read out of. I read a chapter of my Bible. I journal, which I have never, ever done in my life. And that is such a huge part of my recovery, is just putting pen to paper and just reviewing the day before and where I'm at and what my thoughts are and what my feelings are, whatever. Again, there's a lot of prayer. There's an awful lot of listening to your podcast. I've got some community things going, again, mostly through my church. I'm actually starting a recovery group tonight that my church hosts, with a group of men that I'm really excited about. And, Paul, there's a lot of reflection that goes on too. And I try not to focus on that rearview mirror too much, but I do have to look back, and I have to think about what I did and realize what I've done and the collateral damage that I've left behind. I can't just ignore that. I can't change it. I can't kill myself over it, but I still have to reflect on it and use it as a way to kind of propel myself forward as I continue to grow and learn.
Greg, about 20 seconds ago, you said something, and I want to highlight this because it's huge. You said, I'm going to start something and I'm excited about it. It was a recovery meeting at your church, but what I want to highlight is that I'm excited about it. At the end of my drinking, I wasn't excited about shit, except maybe getting more alcohol, right? But that wasn't even drinking to feel good. That was drinking to not feel like shit. So 45 days away with alcohol, there's an excitement that has returned to your life. You are excited about something. Your body is producing dopamine or feel-good chemicals around something that's not involving alcohol. In fact, just the opposite, getting a group of guys together to depart from alcohol. In the late 1700s, there was a Seneca man, a Native American Indian, named Handsome Lake. And he found when he brought his tribesmen together around the campfire and discussed their addiction, they healed. They were able to quit drinking. And then Bill W. and Dr. Bob took this concept to the next level. And I feel there's a wave of people, podcasts, we're doing the same thing, just on a different level, in a different medium. It's pretty cool how we can do this in 2025. Greg, Earlier in the episode, you mentioned your wife, you two are separated. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Is this something you are seeking guidance with?
We are actively working towards reconciliation. The absolute core thing she needed from me before she would even consider reconciliation is sobriety. And, I'm in early sobriety. I will not use the word only because 45 days is 45 days and I'm proud of myself. But there needs to be some more time. I spent 24 years tearing this thing down and it doesn't get built back up in a couple of months. So we are probably closer than we've ever been. So much of that is because I'm present now and I am there in a way for her that I've never been before. We still live separately, but we spend an awful lot of time together. And like I said, the goal is reconciliation. We have not given up on each other. Thank God she didn't give up on me. She should have so many times and so long ago, but she, for whatever reason, didn't. So yeah, we're working towards getting ourselves back together and really just kind of starting from scratch and starting a marriage that has a sober husband in it, for crying out loud. How much is that to ask? I mean, it was too much for me for 24 years, but that's what she needs and that's what she wants and that's what she's going to get.
Greg, I feel a miracle is taking place, but as Miracle Max from The Princess Bride says, if you rush a miracle, you get rotten miracles. This is going to take time. You're going to need patience, and you're in the process. You are healing. A beautiful thing is unfolding before you. I got one more question, Greg, before we hit the rapid fire round. What would you tell that younger Greg, Scott, a newborn child, or your two young kids, and he's drinking 8 to 10 beers a night? What would you tell that Greg?
Knock it off. You have so much in front of you. You've been given so many good gifts. You're so blessed. You have no idea all these things that you have now that are coming down the road, and you're wasting it. You're wasting it because you have this need to numb all this stuff, to self-medicate with this poison, this trash that you're putting into your body every day. Yeah, it would just be knock it off, man. What are you doing? Like I said, I can't go back. I can't change it. But man, if I could talk to that stupid kid again somehow and do that and rewind, I would just tell him, put it down, leave it alone, get it out of your life.
Greg, we have reached the rapid fire round. If you could answer these questions in 5 to 10 seconds, that would be great. Are you ready?
You bet. I am.
All right. What's been your best sober moment?
I'm a big fan of music, like I told you, and there's a song by Journey called Faithfully, and there's a line in that song that says, I get the joy of rediscovering you. I'm getting the joy of rediscovering my wife, and I'm getting the joy of rediscovering myself, Paul. And so that's not really a moment, it's a process, but that's been the most amazing thing of this sobriety so far.
Yeah, I want to highlight that's an R-E word, rediscovering, reclaiming, returning to the true self. I love it. Greg, what's your favorite alcohol-free drink?
It would be an Arnold Palmer with unsweet tea.
What's the point of life?
To love God with all your heart, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. You alluded to it earlier.
If you could go see one concert tomorrow with me, with a sober friend, where are we going?
REM's getting back together and we're going to see them.
I love Losing My Religion. That's such a great song.
Favorite band all time.
Okay. What's the one thing you've learned about yourself since quitting drinking?
That I don't have to be afraid. I don't have to be afraid to be the person that I was created to be, that I can be comfortable in my own skin, that I can walk into a room full of people and I can just be myself. I don't need alcohol to modify the person that God made me to be.
And what guidance or advice can you give to somebody who wants to quit drinking, Greg?
Never, ever, ever give up on yourself. I went through hell for 40 years. I tried getting sober more than once, and I did, Paul. I told you I got to a point where I gave up on myself, and thank God that wasn't the end of it. Thank God I gave myself another chance, because if I didn't, I don't even want to think about where I'd be heading right now. So if you get knocked down, you just get right on back up. There's some beauty in the struggle for sure. And I promise anybody who's listening that there is freedom on the other side.
And Greg, you might need to ditch the booze if. Let's hear it.
Paul, you might need to ditch the booze if you're watching your marriage fall apart in front of your eyes, and the only thing you care about is that next stand beer.
Yeah, that fits the criteria, Greg. It does. Yeah, we're both in the right spot.
Amen.
That was awesome. That flew by, Greg. Phenomenal work, and congrats on 45 days alcohol-free.
Thank you, Paul.
I know this is going to help a lot of listeners, man. Thanks for coming on.
Can I say one last thing?
Of course.
So I've listened to enough of your episodes to know that when you were young, you wanted to be a rock star. You are, man. You are. In this space with what you do to me and thousands of other people, you're a freaking rock star, Paul, and I cannot thank you enough for all that you do for people like me.
Greg, thank you. I guess from one rock star to another, man. You're kicking major ass too, Greg. Great job.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to thank our production team for today's episode. We have our editor, Natasha, Robin on the show notes, and then Chris on the decks putting it all together. I also want to thank our sponsors. Recovery Elevator, this isn't a no to alcohol, but a hell yes to a better life. I love you guys.
I see you, Savior, I see you, Savior, Almighty Savior, I see you, Savior, I see you, Savior, I see you, Savior, Almighty Savior, I see you, Savior.